Hey guys, I am back with another update on trying to fix my form when I'm trying to throw. I want to talk about something that I've been struggling with that I've been really working on was really trying to engage my hips when I'm throwing. And I think that this has been something that I've been trying to figure out because whenever you're trying to throw farther, everyone says like that's like the thing that really gets it to fly out of your hand is when you can engage your hips. And that makes a lot of sense. I think in any kind of sport that where there's like a swinging motion, whether it's golf or baseball, like they always talk about, you can't just use your arms to go through the motion. Like you have to engage your whole body into it. And I think that getting the hips involved in disc golf is definitely a secret to trying to make sure that you're able to really put a lot of power behind the throw. And so, one of the biggest focuses that I've been really working on was this idea of having the pull through motion be on a straight rail. So, like, instead of trying to go through your body, if you look on the left here, you can see that I set up this kind of like XY axis from above. And like the Y axis is like the longitudinal axis, right? Going from the very back of the reach back to where you're going to pull through and release the disc. And then the x-axis is that like latitudinal, like left to right motion that, when I was first starting to throw, that like I don't think that I was necessarily, actually I know that I definitely wasn't going straight back. And that this has made a big difference is going through and trying to make sure that this was the idea that the reach back starts and pulls through on that y-axis really straight, and it's made a big difference in the throw. When you look at this idea of the straight rail, it becomes really important because if your pull through is too far inwards of your body, you end up getting this kind of curling motion when you're pulling through on the disc. And you can see that it does kind of feel like you can like really turn your hips into it when you throw it this way. But one of the things that happens is that you end up going around your body and you take a lot of velocity off the disc. And I think that it also kind of messes up your accuracy because your arm's not coming the same direction each time you're throwing it. It could, if you reach in too far one time or not far enough. And so just becoming really consistent with that reach back was really important in throwing with a lot of power and making sure that it comes out straight. But now, what I really wanted to do was make sure that I was engaging my hips. And, I came up with this exercise that I do when I go throw. And really, this was me trying to figure out if I was even engaging my hips at all. And, one of the things that really messed me up or had been messing me up was this idea of the pull through. Because I think when I hear the words pull through, I think, well, I got to pull it with my arm, right? That's the idea. And the way I'm set up here is I'm set up with my reach back, and I'm set up with most of my weight on the back foot, so my left foot. And there's a little bit of weight on the right foot for balance, but for the most part, the most of the weight is on that back foot. And I said to myself, can I pull this disc on this rail with just my arm and not transfer my weight? Is it possible for me to bring this disc through and then go to throw it without actually transferring my weight? And the answer is yeah. Like I can bring this disc along that rail fairly easily without actually transferring any of my weight and without actually using my hips at all. And so you can see here, there's like a little bit of hip turn, but for the most part, I can bring that disc really easily across my body and not use my hips or weight transfer to get to that point. And so when I go to throw, if I throw this way with pulling with just my arm, it means that I'm probably not going to engage my hips, or it's not forcing me to engage my hips. So it's just like another timing issue that's created by trying to use my arm to pull through. And so you can see here, I readjust my balance, and right now there's like almost no weight on the front leg. The back leg has most of the weight, and I can still pull this disc back and forth on that same rail without actually um, shifting my weight. There's a little bit, a tiny bit of hip turn, but it's very minimal. And so what I do now is when I go to throw, and I think that you guys can do this too, is try both. Is try to set yourself up in that reach back position and pull the disc on that rail without transferring any weight or engaging your hips. And then now what I do is when I go to throw or when I go to set up my throw, I engage my shoulder, my like kind of my core to move the disc on that same rail. So instead of using my arm to move that disc, I'm using my shoulder to move the disc on that rail. And then I use my arm to bend it, make sure it stays on that rail so it doesn't swing out. And so now whenever I go up to throw a drive, that's like the first thing I do is I just kind of like make sure that like I get that muscle memory into my mind that like, oh, I'm gonna engage my shoulder to start the throwing motion. And you can see here that like just by using my shoulder to start that motion instead of pulling it with my arm, like I have to transfer the weight. I couldn't. There's like no way for me to not have that balance. So just because of the virtue of that or that position that I'm rotating from is so involved in my back, which leads down to my hips and then which leads into the weight transfer. And so now whenever I go to throw, that's like the first thing that I can do. So I don't know, just a kind of a quick thought about how I was going to try to really start approaching whenever I get up to the tee box or when I need to go approach for a long throw is that I really try to focus on this idea of using that shoulder to pull the disc on the rail. And I've noticed that what it has done is it's given me a more consistent distance of like 330 to 350. So when I throw this way and I manage to throw flat and, you know, I manage to get the height of the disc correct, I get a really consistent 300 to like 350-ish kind of feet. Whereas before, 330 to 350 would be like when I would really, really get a rip behind the disc with like maybe some nice flip up and turnover flex or whatever. And now it's just been more consistent to getting to this distance. I think the next step for me is getting the timing down of when I start that pull through versus when my front foot lands. I've noticed that it's like really different for a lot of the pros. You know, I was looking at McBeth specifically, and I think that he almost starts that pull through motion before his front foot is fully planted. And I don't know if that's something that's unique to him. You know, I was watching Eagle, and his motion is totally different. I think just because his body composition is different. His arms are much longer. He's much taller, so I think he can get more rotation without that kind of timing on that. My arms aren't that long. I think I'm about the same height as McBeth, which is why I use him for comparison of like who I'm really trying to emulate when I'm trying to throw. So yeah, you know, the next thing I really want to start working on is this idea of when I start pulling through and then, you know, eventually try to start doing some run-ups. I think that every single time I try to do like a full run-up, I always mess up something. And so lately I've just been doing one cross step and then stepping out and then throwing because I feel like I'm more consistent this way. And even though sometimes when I do a run-up, I'll get a little bit more distance, the percentage chance that that throw will actually go where I want it to is so much lower than if I just do a simple cross step and then throw. And so that'll hopefully get there eventually. But this was just something that I've been working on. I don't know. Maybe you guys could try it too. Tell me what you guys think. Yeah.